Sex is play, right? And when we're kids, we have lots of different kinds of fantasy games that we play. We play like we play all kinds of things.
That's so
Doctor,
true.
patient, teacher, student, like all these different silly games.
So true.
Princesses, princes in the forest, whatever. Like
The forest. Yes, wicked.
My way, my style. It's the Arch effect. The Arch effect. My way, my style.
As I continue to find answers through my guests this season about processing grief, sex is loud during these times. Okay, fine, maybe for me more than you. Listen, she's a licensed psychologist, certified sex therapist, founder of the Modern Intimacy podcast, Get Naked with Dr. Kate, and author of What Happened to My Sex Life. Dr. Kate Balestrieri is in the house!
Hi.
hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too.
I have been going through a lot, and I'm really here today to explore how grief and loss intersect with sexual intimacy and self-perception. I have always been a person who has struggled in terms of sexual transparency with myself and with a partner under that whole sexual umbrella because of different lived traumas or body dysmorphia and these different nuances that intersect, which kind of led me to not really engaging in that activity until deep in my 20s. And so sex alone is complex, and then looping any type of distress into that, thoughts and prayers.
It's layered.
Yeah.
It's really layered.
Yeah. But before we do all of that,
Okay.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you today?
Oh, in general?
Yes.
Or being in this moment with you right here?
Oh, you gave me a question. I think in general,
In general, I would say like a 7.
a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if the state of the world were different, maybe it would be a higher number, but
Yeah.
it's pretty stressful right now.
Yeah, I can see that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Kate, I want to get right into it. Grief is often, framed in terms of loss.
Yes.
Of a loved one, a relationship, or even an idea. And so how does the emotional confusion impact our sense of sexual self, would you say?
Such a good question. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind for me right away. One, although some people really love a little element of fear during sex, most of the time, in order to want to feel sexual and really to be in our bodies in a sexually pleasurable way, we need to feel some kind of safety. And when we have a loss in our world, usually that sense of safety is pretty upended, whether it's psychological or physical safety or financial safety, whatever the loss is related to in our lives. So it can leave us questioning everything we know about the world or what we know about ourselves or our relationship. And that can be really, upending in terms of how do we even get into a state in our bodies that feels good enough to be sexual?
You started off saying we enjoy an element of fear.
Some people do
Wait,
during sex.
wait. Like what? What? Like bondage or what are we thinking
Sure.
of?
Well, like the unknown,
Yeah.
or something that might be a little taboo and off limits, right? The fear of getting caught can add an accelerant to desire for some people. Some people it shuts them way down, but some people really love it. But
Yeah.
the condition is there's an agreement around what kind of risk there is, so that's safe for them.
Did you see Baby Girl?
Not yet. I know, I'm dying.
I want to be the baby girl. Is that what Nicole said? Goddess. So can you explain to me though why grief sometimes leads people to either withdraw from intimacy or seek it out impulsively? It's like two ends of the spectrum.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Grief can really, it can evoke some big secondary feelings in us. So for a lot of people, grief, again, brings up fear, it brings up a lack of safety. So that really has an adverse effect on their desire. They can't even access desire until they feel safer in their bodies, safer in the world, safer in the context, and the grief is really interrupting that. So it acts as an inhibition to sexual arousal. But for other people, again, their nervous systems are wired differently. There isn't a right or a wrong way to respond to grief. So for some folks, grief brings up anger, it brings up anxiety, it brings up these nervous system upregulating emotions, and that can feel like an amplifier of desire, but also people might seek out sex because sex brings with it all kinds of feel goods, endorphins, lots of oxytocin, vasopressin, these bonding chemicals, these chemicals that really like cloak our bodies in stress relief.
Yeah.
And so for some folks, it's like they're playing pharmacy, right? I don't feel good. I want to feel better. And sex gives me that ooey gooey feel good. And so I actually get some relief from all this grief.
Yeah. It's a version of, taking some type of pill, it's like, I can totally see that. So when you think about like navigating loss in a romantic relationship, whether that's like a breakup, a divorce, how does navigating that loss uniquely affect that sexual intimacy and that self-ideology?
Tell me what you mean by self-ideology.
So let's say, I've dated just like a little bit.
Okay.
And that alone is like, I'm clearly single, so there's breakups, right? And
Okay.
so I'm curious to know, like, in navigating that loss, for an example, how does that affect my outlook on sexual intimacy moving forward?
Well, I don't know you very well, so I can't speak to you
Yeah, but
distinctly,
the
but
knowledge
the
behind
proverbial
it.
you,
Yeah.
right? All of us. There's a lot of variations. Like some folks feel really lonely, and so they seek out sex with a new partner in their grief to find some connection or find some respite from that loneliness, that sadness. For other people, they might take a hit to their self-esteem after a breakup, and they may not feel worthy of being out in the world to be sexual with other people. So they may hang back for a little while, or they might actually seek out sex, even though they don't feel all that great about themselves, as a way to get that validation. So, grief can compel us in many different directions, depending on what the source of that grief is and what our coping strategies are, what our sense of self typically looks like.
So even in that, for someone struggling to reconnect with their body and their sexuality after that experience or a loss or a parent's loss or a breakup, where do you begin?
In terms of using sex as a coping strategy or
Yeah.
or reconciling a loss of desire for sex, because it can be both.
I mean, yeah, both of those different avenues. Can you speak to them?
Yeah, I mean, grief is such a layered process, and we don't just experience one aspect of grief at a time. More often than not, we're in sort of multiple phases of grief, like denial, shock, bargaining, anger, all the things, right? So those are not, it's not a linear phase or a linear pathway. So we can be experiencing lots of different kinds of grief or reactions to our grief at the same time, which might mean that our openness to sex is different depending on where we are in the healing process. So I think when people are struck with grief, it's important to kind of get clear on what your body is telling you might want or need, what your mind, what your heart are telling you, and to maybe be in consultation with people that you trust if you don't know, because it's okay to not know, and grief is really confusing sometimes. So you might have a lot of different wants and then also different aversions at the same time, which can feel really demoralizing, right?
Yeah.
Because you're looking for an answer and a path out of these hard feelings.
I'm a person who enjoys a fast-paced life.
Okay.
We live in a very fast-paced, hyper-digitized world today. And so I'm curious to know, even like with that context, what would you say to like what role that takes on when it comes to grief, whether personal or relational, in shaping modern relationships?
Wow, this is such a good question. It's such a big question. We are really digital humans, and there can be a lot of community that's built online, which makes it much more easy to access, but also it can make it feel a little less hollow or a little more hollow, right? Like our digital communities can feel really two-dimensional. So for some folks who are like looking for some in-person contact, they might actually feel lonelier or more isolated if they're seeking only through technology, whereas other people may feel really invigorated by the fact that they don't have to get out of bed to feel connected to someone and to seek out either a new relationship romantically or platonically or connection with someone they already know.
What are your views on like kink shaming?
I think we should stop it.
Yeah?
Yeah, let's stop kink shaming
Okay.
altogether.
Yeah,
right now.
Right.
1, 2,
right,
3.
Right now.
Stop.
It's over. Right. So, you know, people have their own different versions of whatever kink works for them.
Sure.
When does a kink go too far?
Yeah. When it becomes a version of self-harm that person has decided is too far for them, and or if it causes harm to another person that they did not consent to. Right?
You know, and maybe you have knowledge with this, but in holding space for kinks.
Yeah. I have a little knowledge about that.
Holding space for kinks. I struggle with, like personally, I struggle with the idea of kinks and then my religious and spiritual upbringing and marrying the two. And so I think that thinking about a kink or acting on a kink, having that foundation brings some sort of guilt or remorse. How do I move through that?
Honestly, that's a bit of a spiritual crisis and question to navigate. That's not a sex problem.
Right.
Right? So maybe a little bit out of my scope because I'm not a member of any spiritual kind of pastoral process. But I think we have to look at a couple of things. Like religion can bring with it lots of community. It can bring a lot of strength and a lot of peace. It can give people a lot of meaning. And when we look at the historical function of religion, it has been designed to control big groups of people.
Yeah.
And part of how we do that is by controlling people's relationship with sex. And that controls their identity and it gives them a lot of boundaries to adhere to in order to get the resources that they need to survive. So I take a very secular approach to this question because I think regardless of someone's religious or spiritual beliefs, it's important to think about what are you being asked in your beliefs? What are you being asked to give up? And does that really reconcile with what you believe and what you need to feel like a human? And for a lot of people who are kinky people, what they're really trying to experience is a certain emotion or a physical sensation. And when we look at it that way, we can kind of take it out of this dimension of is this moral or immoral? Because really, we all get to have a full range of emotions and feelings. That's part of being a human, right? We would not be able to feel if we weren't supposed to feel. And so I think about kinks as a supplement to our everyday lives, our everyday sex, to the human experience. It's a way for us to get to a place of feeling and play that we may not be able to get to otherwise. So I just don't look at it as being in conflict with spirituality. I look at it as being a complement to it, but for a lot of folks, I think that's a question they have to answer for themselves when they think about their own beliefs.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's definitely something to noodle on. And I'm a person who identifies under the queer umbrella. And, you know, queer people tend to be very sexually fluid, if you will. You know, whether that's many people or the parties or, you know, just overall generally more sex positive. What's the psychology behind that?
Yeah. One of the things that I love about studying queer history and also kinky history is the political element of sort of subverting what is the enforced norm in any culture. And I think that what you find in common when you look at queer and kinky cultures is that people are saying, we're open to lots of different ideas and we don't have to have this like forced choice option in life. And that I think is really beautiful, right? We get to say yes to as much as we want to and no to the things that don't work for us without dictating what other people are doing. And I think that's where there's room for so much expansiveness in the world that folks who maybe aren't in those communities would potentially benefit from understanding a little bit more.
So can you speak to the idea with sexual roles, right? And then the the archaic ideology of like heterosexual norms, but like specifically with queer people and, you know, gay people in those roles, the whole dominance of it all, and that, you know, those two, like marrying the two, and why people are rigid and versus not. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this question. Power dynamics run amok in our culture, and we absorb different relationships to power based on our social location. So that, of course, seeps into our sex lives, and we are probably the most vulnerable in our sex lives than as we are in any other domain of our lives. So for a lot of people, their relationship with power is also brought into sex because it is so vulnerable. And in sort of the heteronormative world, power is overcoupled with gender. And so we live in a patriarchal world, right? Regardless of whether we are queer or straight, we still grew up in patriarchy. So a lot of folks are disentangling the relationship that they have with power, period, full stop, but also as it relates to gender and how they make sense of their gender and their sense of self and their vulnerabilities in the world. So sex is a place where people can really intentionally play with that, play with power in consenting ways, because it's so non-consensually forced on us in the world outside of the bedroom. So I think a lot of folks are kind of trying to figure out, like, how do I feel safe? How do I feel pleasure? How do I play with feeling disempowered in a way where I still feel empowered? Or how do I play with feeling in a power position when power has not been safely introduced to me in the world, right?
Yeah.
How do I get to be a safe and powerful person? So there's a lot of deconstruction and uncoupling and rebuilding that happens when we consciously play with power and sex.
When does sex become an addiction? Like, when is it unhealthy?
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy around the term sex addiction. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to shift the language to maybe compulsive or out of
Okay.
control. When something is compulsive, it means we don't have the ability to stop, right? We're engaging in it outside of our conscious desire to do it. Over and over again, we've tried to stop, we can't stop. It's really getting in the way of other life circumstances or other life things. Like somebody maybe is watching so much porn that they're missing their work time, and they're missing hours at work and not making money, or they get fired. Or maybe it's getting in the way of their parenting responsibilities, or
Yeah.
their ability to take care of themselves in other ways, or be relational. So,
Yeah.
everyone's got to set that line for themselves.
Yeah. You briefly mentioned pornography.
It's a big topic.
It's a big topic
Yeah.
because I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be honest. You know,
Okay.
I experienced pornography when I was like 12 or 11 years old. You know, I think too young, which I think has disrupted my brain.
Okay.
But like, how do you look at that? How do you approach the effects of pornography? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's all on Twitter. You can get on there for a good laugh, and then next thing you know, you're seeing somebody get plowed.
Totally.
Like, just like it's in your face. Like, how do you
Yeah.
just live and kind of like experience it in a positive way when it's, you know, affected for years after years, and, you know, during these work hours?
Yeah, it's such a big conversation. One, I think we have to be a lot more responsible with where porn is accessible, because children are seeing it earlier and earlier. I think the average age of exposure right now is 9, and kids don't know what they're seeing. So they're making up a lot of stories about what that means. It's beyond their sophistication cognitively to really get it. And it does kind of bring up a lot of fear or confusion or excitement. They don't know what to do with that. So I think that's probably answer number one.
Yeah.
But number two, I think we really need to do a better job of having effective, accurate sex education in our schools. And that includes porn literacy. That doesn't mean showing kids porn. It means helping kids understand what porn is and isn't, so that when they see it, they know how to make sense of it in a way that actually allows it to serve its purpose, which is fantasy, play, right? Instead of them seeing it and feeling like, one, they're doing something wrong, which is often how young kids
Yeah.
internalize this. And then they feel like they're wrong or bad because it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was exciting to them. Sex is interesting and exciting. So porn literacy is a way that we can take away the shame and help kids and young adults and humans just understand what they're seeing in a way that actually creates a positive effect of porn. But then we also have to address the porn industry, how porn is created, and make sure that that's ethical.
Yeah.
And all of that starts with a recontextualization of sex and porn in our culture. We have a really sex negative culture.
Yeah.
So we have to start changing that before we can really have an effect on what we do with sex education and porn, so that it has a positive increase on kids and our lives.
But do you think it's needed?
I just rambled a whole bunch
No,
there.
that's fine. No. But do you think porn is like needed amongst society?
I think erotic material can be really positive and healthy, and it can help folks have a sex life that is thriving and sensual and enhanced. Yes.
Yeah.
The way that porn is created and consumed today,
Yeah.
I think creates a lot of wedging between people and their authentic and fullest sexuality. And it is very political, and it does come with a lot of problems. But erotic material is not going away.
No.
It's existed since humans existed.
Yep.
So again, like, we can't really just shove it under a rug. That's not useful.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes it more interesting, and it will make it more dangerous for both the performers
Yeah.
and the consumers.
Yeah. I remember I saw porn. It was like on television. It was like on HBO at like at nighttime. I was like, what is this? You know? But yeah, and I do think like seeing it at a young age
Yeah.
for like over a decade before I actually engaged in any type of sexual activity, I think it has hindered how I look at it. You know what I mean?
so?
Just because I feel like pornography is not necessarily reality.
No, of course not.
Right.
It's it's WWE.
And so when you show up in the room ready to go in real life, and it's not given what you've seen for over a decade,
Yeah.
you're like,
Right.
what do I do with this?
Exactly. Yeah. It can if your only exposure to sex is porn, what you're basically doing is creating a feedback loop in your brain that loops pleasure and a one-person psychological system and physiological system together. So then when you are with another human in the room later, your brain's like, whoa, 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 this isn't the script that we have for pleasure. There's too many variables here.
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah.
How do I make this loop extend to this stuff? And it can be really overwhelming.
Hey friend, I hope you're enjoying this episode, but I want you to discover a workplace where connection and creativity thrive. Soho Works is a global community for entrepreneurs, creators, and innovators who value collaboration as much as productivity. With beautifully designed spaces, intentional amenities, and access to an inspiring network of like-minded individuals, Soho Works is your home for ideas and growth, created for Soho House members and those who share our vision. This is where work meets community. Join us and elevate the way you work. Learn more at sohohouse.com.
How do you engage in healthy relationships when you have bad sex habits?
Well, what are bad sex habits? What does that mean?
Maybe indulging in the impulsive far too often to where it's disrupting your everyday life. And your internal system feels like, I'm doing this too much. So then how do you show up in a healthy relationship?
Well, great question. I think if someone has identified that sex or sex with themselves or porn or sex with other people is getting in the way of them having the kind of healthy relationships they want, I would say the first place to start is maybe a reevaluation of what you actually want. What are your needs in a relationship, and how might you be trying to seek them indirectly in these other ways? You know, a lot of the time when people are compulsive with sex or porn, it's because they don't know how to be direct in getting their relational needs met. So it's safer for them to kind of go in this other way. So working with a sex therapist or working with somebody that you trust who is sex positive is going to be really important to kind of help you figure out, how do you bring those wants and needs to a partner in a healthy way? And also, how do you figure out what containment strategies might be good for you? Because I'm not going to say that everybody needs to stop watching porn or masturbating or having the sex that they want. I think that's not the answer.
Yeah.
But cultivating and redirecting it back into a relationship is a good start.
Yeah. And this will help with that.
It
Your book
can.
here.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can.
What prompted you to take on this journey?
Yeah, so in my practice, probably one of the most common complaints that people are coming in to address is desire discrepancy, meaning one partner has higher desire, the other partner has lower desire. So they're just having a hard time for both of them, like feeling satisfied sexually. So this book, What Happened to My Sex Life, is a series of reasons why people lose connection with their desire and a step-by-step guide on how to get it back. Yeah.
Are we reading this book tonight? Dr. Kate, I have an uncomfortable question of the day.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
If you had to describe your sex life as a movie genre, is it a rom-com, a thriller, a horror, or a documentary? What would it be and why?
Oh my God, I love this question so much. It's changed genres over the years, but probably in this moment, I would say it's a documentary. Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm exploring. I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I've had a lot of sex in my life.
Good for you.
Great sex, some not great sex.
I want to say
right?
that.
But I've like hit a point where I'm like, it's not landing for me anymore. I need to try something different. I want to play in different ways. So I'm investigating, I'm exploring, I'm going into new sexual communities, I'm trying new things, and I don't know what the answers will be yet. So it will evolve in the way it needs to.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
I would say that mine would be a thriller.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell me how.
You just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know the ending. You might cry. You might run. I might cry. I might run. Just, but true or false? Sexual identity and intimacy naturally evolve over time.
Oh, true.
Okay. So how do life transitions, like approaching one's 30s, one's 40s, a new decade, or experiencing a career change, intersect with closing that chapter or era?
So human beings are dynamic creatures, right? Like we're just not the same when we were 15 as we are when we're 35 or 55. We get so much more life experience. Every decision that we make in life, everything that we encounter influences how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we see other people, how we see safety, how we see pleasure, how we see grief, all of those things. So of course our sexuality has the potential to evolve over time. And as you just heard me say, right, I've had lots of, sex in my life that was sort of like one kind of way or two kinds of ways.
Yep.
And now I'm at a point where I'm like, been there, done that. It's not scratching the same itch. Let me try something different. And that's because my life experiences have given me so much more knowledge and exposure to new ideas. And I'm someone with an open mind and a curiosity, an insatiable curiosity, right? So a lot of how it evolves over life depends on how in conversation people are with themselves, how willing they are to be expansive in the way they see themselves and pleasure, and how, open they are to trying new things.
Yeah. Dr. Kate, what are your thoughts and opinions on the hoe phase, the hoe stage?
Well, the only time I use the word hoe is in a sex positive way.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we take sex shaming out of this and slut shaming out of this conversation, I think it's great for people to explore their sexuality and like really lean into figuring out who they are, what they like, what kinds of things excite them. It's a great way for us to learn about ourselves because sex is play, right? And when we're kids, we have lots of different kinds of fantasy games that we play. We play like we play all kinds of things.
that's so true.
Doctor, patient, teacher, student, like all these different silly games.
So true.
Princesses, princes in the forest, whatever. Like
The forest. Yes, Wicked.
what are we doing? We're learning in
Yeah.
creative ways. And so as adults, sex is a way that we get to continue that learning in different different playscapes.
What about like sneaky links?
What about them?
You like those?
I don't like deceptive behavior in sex. I think that is not cool. So I think it depends on how you define sneaky link.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine if you have people like transparently that you're hooking up with once in a while. and
Sure.
You do you.
Sure. And so just looking at, sex as a whole, what would you say are the top 3 non-sexual turn-ons that can help reset your energy?
Ooh, God, that's so subjective
Yes,
for
yeah.
each person. But I talk about this a little bit in my book, and so maybe this is a good place to start. Like, one, being more embodied. Like, we don't think about sex as an embodiment practice all the time, but the more you are in your body and you're intentional about noticing the sensations in like a gentle movement practice, and being really present, the more you are able to pay attention to pleasurable sensations, which can really increase your sensory capacity and stimulation during sex. So stretch more, right? Be in your body in a way that isn't sexual, but you're moving.
I stretch a lot this year.
Good.
Yes.
Do it. Yeah, I love that. I often will talk to my clients about like, hey, what's your practice every day? Can you jump on a yoga mat on your floor and just stretch for 5 minutes and notice the stretching? And if you practice that over time,
It's kind of hot too when you stretch. Yeah.
Totally. It can be. I mean, put a mirror in front of yourself. Do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So movement and being present in that. The other thing that I would say non-sexually that can really like increase your capacity for pleasure and your sex IQ, if you will, is building a non-sexual pleasure practice every single day. Like really invest time, and it can be like a minute or two, in savoring and enjoying experiences that feel good from a sensory perspective. So, get the candle that you love. This one smells awesome, by the way.
Thanks,
Yeah, like really take a moment to like smell it and sit with what it smells like. That's a pleasure practice.
It is. I am a candle burner.
Are you?
I'm a fire sign, and so
Okay.
I think it's like what my spirit needs. You go to my house and there's like at least 4 candles lit.
I love that.
But that's good to know.
Yeah.
And I do want to hit on this. Oh God, I'm tired.
Okay.
Okay. People have asked me to be a part of their threesome. And I'm like, hey, people, I just want to make it to one person. So when it comes to, the open relationships of
Yeah.
it all, what are the long-term effects?
Oh, it depends on each person, right?
Yeah.
For some people, the long-term effects are really wonderful. It gives them all kinds of opportunity to practice having strong communication, setting healthy boundaries, processing things like jealousy and other big feelings. Like when you make a commitment to the emotional maturity that's required for open relationships to be successful, that can be a really enhancing experience in your life. Now, other folks can accomplish that in monogamous relationships. You don't need to be in an open relationship to achieve those things. But if you're someone who does lean more into that open relationship space, they can be really fulfilling, right? But if you're someone who's like, no, monogamy is my jam. That's all I want. I can do. I can have sex with one person at a time. That's it for me. Okay, great. You don't need to have lots and lots of sex partners to be sex positive.
Is it not like a little greedy?
No,
No?
I
Okay.
don't think so.
Okay.
Why?
Cause I'm like, if I feel like it's like you go to a candy store, right?
Yeah.
I walk out with a nice, 3 Musketeer, but you want the whole store?
I mean, there's a lot of good candy in the store.
There's a lot of good candy in the store. All right. You know what? Touche. Touche. Dr. Kate, it is that time, though, where we get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm terrified.
So it's time to play
Okay.
Perfect Pitch.
Okay.
So if you could collaborate with anyone on a project, who would it be? And what would that project be?
In this moment, I would say probably Gloria Steinem.
Okay.
I've always wanted to meet her, and I would want to collaborate with her and with other women, of course, to really redefine feminism in this modern world so that it is more accessible for people, because the word feminism right now carries a lot of negative connotations. So I would love to kind of have a rethink about it.
Okay. So that is good to know. So, what you're going to do now with that information,
no.
you're going to look
Am
to
I
your
gonna call
camera.
her?
You're going to look to your camera and you're going to give her your 30-second pitch
Oh no.
to collaborate with
wanna-
this project. Are you ready?
Okay.
Are you ready? 3,
I
2.
can't do this. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Ms. Steinem, you're a fucking rock star. You changed the way I think about everything. If you're open to it, I would love to sit down with you and have a chat about how you, me, so many other women in the world can sit down together collaboratively and really make some change and some movement because we are needed right now.
Ooh, look at that, 30 seconds. You actually did so well.
Did I do
Yeah,
30
yeah.
seconds?
I can't wait for that to happen for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I hope it can.
Yeah. What mantra or affirmation kept you grounded during tough times?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think it's probably changed over the course of my life, depending on what the tough time was. But if I had to really boil it down, I would say that what's kept me going is reminding myself that I can trust myself, right? I think sometimes when we go through really hard things, especially a lot of grief, the thing that's so hard about it is that we don't know if we're going to be okay on the other side of the intensity of that feeling. And we don't know when that feeling is going to end. So it can feel really helpless and we can feel really powerless. So trusting yourself and trusting that with the right support, with resources, like none of us are an island, we're not doing this on our own, but trusting that we do have the capacity to be okay again.
Yeah. And I think what you said is really important too, because I know I often forget and sometimes struggle to ask for help. We're not alone. We're not on an island. And so what is your assignment on this planet?
As a human, my assignment is to live the fullest life I can live, right? Professionally, I would say my assignment is to remind other people that they can do that too. Yeah.
Well, thank you for trusting me.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
This is so good.
And starting the conversation. I love it.
I do feel a little bit more open, a little bit more healed in my sexual intimacy, especially, going through it these last couple of years. So
It's
thank
been
you.
rough, huh?
I'm getting massage tonight.
Okay. I
Yeah,
love that
just
side.
rub it out. Whoa.
I mean, you have the right guest. I mean, no, that sounded even worse. Oh,
Oh, God. Okay, Dr. Kate, thanks so much.
Stop there.
You've got to go.
Thank you.